In the ancient kingdom of Nyota, where the sun painted the vast savannas golden and the nights echoed with ancestral whispers, lived Queen Amara. Her beauty was legendary, skin smooth as polished ebony, eyes that held the wisdom of 1,000 moons, and a smile that could make flowers bloom in the desert. But beneath this enchanting exterior lay a heart scarred by betrayal and a soul thirsting for revenge. King Jabari, her husband of 20 years, had once been her everything. Their love story was the kind that bards sang about in village squares and mothers whispered to their daughters as bedtime tales. They had met as teenagers, when Amara was just a chief's daughter and Jabari was the young crown prince of Nyota. In those early days, their love bloomed like morning glories under the first light of dawn. Jabari would sneak away from his royal duties to meet Amara by the sacred baobab tree, where they would share secrets and dreams under its ancient branches. He would bring her wild honey collected from the highest cliffs, risking his life just to see her eyes light up with joy. She, in turn, would weave him necklaces from rare seeds and tell him stories passed down through generations of her mother's family. When they married, the celebration lasted 7 days and 7 nights. The entire kingdom rejoiced, for never had they seen a couple so perfectly matched. Jabari was strong yet gentle, a warrior who preferred peace to war. Amara was wise beyond her years, bringing fresh ideas to age-old problems. Together, they ruled Nyota with both justice and mercy, ushering in a golden age that seemed destined to last forever. But forever, as Amara would learn, was nothing but a sweet lie whispered by the wind. 20 years into their marriage, strange things began happening in the palace. Jabari started attending secret meetings that even Amara wasn't allowed to join. He would return late at night, smelling of unfamiliar perfumes and wearing guilty expressions that he tried to hide behind forced smiles. At first, Amara dismissed her suspicions. After all, a king had many responsibilities, and some matters of state required discretion. But then the whispers started. Palace servants would fall silent when she entered rooms. Young maidens would avoid her gaze in the marketplace. Even the court advisors seemed to be walking on eggshells around her. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and Amara was determined to discover what it was. One moonless night, she followed Jabari when he snuck out of their royal chambers. Wrapped in a dark cloak, she trailed him through the palace corridors, past the guards who pretended not to see him, and into the ancient forest that bordered the kingdom. The path he took was well worn, suggesting this was a journey he had made many times before. Deep in the forest stood a small hut, its windows glowing with warm light. Through its crude window, Amara saw something that shattered her world into 1,000 pieces. There was Jabari, her beloved king, in the arms of a young woman named Zuri. She was barely 20 years old, a palace servant who had joined the royal household just months ago. But it wasn't just their embrace that broke Amara's heart. It was the way Jabari looked at Zuri, the same way he used to look at Amara all those years ago. The way he tenderly touched Zuri's swelling belly made it clear that their relationship had already borne fruit. Amara didn't confront them that night. She returned to the palace, her mind spinning with dark thoughts. For 3 days and 3 nights, she neither ate nor slept. She just sat in her private chambers, watching the sun rise and set while her heart turned from gold to iron to stone. On the 4th day, she summoned Kanza, the oldest and most feared witch doctor in all of Nyota. The ancient woman lived in a cave at the edge of the kingdom, where even the bravest warriors feared to tread. People said she could speak to the dead and bend the will of the gods themselves. "Wise one," Amara said when Kanza arrived, her bones rattling with each step, I need your darkest magic. Kanza's clouded eyes seemed to peer straight into Amara's soul. Dark magic always demands a price, my queen. Are you prepared to pay it? Name your price. The old woman smiled, revealing teeth filed to points. The price is not for me to name. The spirits will decide what they want to take from you. But know this, what you're asking for will change you forever. There will be no going back. There is already no going back, Amara replied, her voice as cold as mountain frost. My husband has betrayed me with a servant girl. She carries his child while my own womb remains empty after 20 years of marriage. I want them to suffer as I have suffered. Kanza nodded slowly. Then I will teach you an ancient curse, one that hasn't been used since the time of our ancestors. But remember, my queen, revenge is a meal best served with complete commitment. Hesitation will be your downfall. For the next month, Amara learned the dark arts from Kanza. She learned how to speak to shadows and command them to do her bidding. She learned how to brew potions that could make a person's worst nightmares come true. She learned spells that could twist love into hatred and trust into paranoia. But most importantly, she learned the curse of the last meal, a ritual so powerful that it would bind the souls of her victims to eternal torment. While she studied with Kanza, Amara maintained her facade as the loving queen. She smiled at Jabari, pretended not to notice his absences, and even sent gifts to Zuri, who had now moved into a house closer to the palace. The young woman's belly grew larger with each passing moon, and with it grew Amara's hatred. Finally, when the moon was full and the stars aligned just as Kanza had instructed, Amara put her plan into motion. She announced a grand feast to celebrate 20 years of her marriage to Jabari. The entire kingdom was invited, but the guest of honor would be the king himself. The day of the feast arrived, and the palace was decorated with flowers and colorful cloths. Musicians played sweet melodies while dancers performed traditional dances. Food and wine flowed freely, and everyone praised the queen's generosity. Everyone except Zuri, who had not been invited. As the feast reached its peak, Amara stood to make a speech. "My beloved husband," she said, raising her cup, 20 years ago, you gave me your heart. Today, I want to give you something special in return." Servants brought out a covered dish and placed it before the king. When Jabari lifted the cover, he found a perfectly prepared meal, his favorite dishes arranged with artistic precision. "Eat, my love," Amara said sweetly. "I prepared this myself." Jabari, touched by this personal gesture from his wife, began to eat. The assembled guests watched in admiration, not knowing that they were witnessing the beginning of a terrible curse. As Jabari finished the last bite, Amara's smile grew wider. "Did you enjoy your meal, my king?" "It was delicious," he replied, "but there was a strange taste I couldn't quite place." "That would be the taste of betrayal," Amara said, her voice changing from honey to venom. "The same taste I've had in my mouth since I discovered your infidelity." The room fell silent. Jabari's face paled as understanding dawned in his eyes. "What have you done?" he whispered. "I fed you your own heart," Amara announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the great hall. "Not the physical one that beats in your chest, but the spiritual heart you gave to that servant girl. I captured it using the darkest magic, cooked it with herbs of binding, and served it back to you. From this day forward, you will never be able to love another. Your heart will burn with eternal fire, and the more you try to love, the more it will hurt." Jabari clutched his chest as the curse took hold. The guests watched in horror as their king fell to his knees, his face contorted in agony. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the spiritual torment that was beginning to consume him. "And that's not all," Amara continued, turning to address the stunned crowd. "I curse this kingdom that turned a blind eye to its king's betrayal. From this day forward, love will bring only pain to the people of Nyota. Parents will fear loving their children too much. Lovers will draw back from deep emotions, and marriages will be arrangements of convenience rather than passion." The curse spread like wildfire through the kingdom. People who had been deeply in love suddenly found themselves unable to bear the sight of each other. Parents became distant from their children, fearing the pain that too much love would bring. The very concept of love became something to be feared rather than celebrated. As for Zuri, she gave birth to a son who would never know his father's love. Jabari, consumed by the curse, couldn't bear to be near the child without experiencing excruciating pain. The young woman eventually left the kingdom, taking her son with her to start a new life far from the curse's reach. Amara continued to rule Nyota, but she was no longer the wise and gentle queen the people had known. The dark magic had changed her, turning her into a creature of shadows and bitterness. Her beauty remained, but it was now the terrible beauty of a frozen lake, cold, hard, and dangerous. Years passed, and the kingdom of Nyota became known as a place where love dared not enter. Travelers would hurry through its territories, feeling their hearts grow cold the moment they crossed its borders. Parents would warn their children never to fall in love with anyone from Nyota, lest they be caught in the curse's grip. But the greatest price was paid by Amara herself. The spirits, as Kanza had warned, took their payment. They took not her life or her beauty or her power, but her ability to feel anything at all. She became a hollow shell, unable to experience joy or sorrow, pleasure or pain. She had destroyed love in her kingdom, but in doing so, she had destroyed herself. One day, many years later, an old woman appeared at the palace gates. It was Zuri, aged and worn by time and hardship. She had returned to confront the queen who had destroyed so many lives. "Was it worth it?" Zuri asked when she stood before Amara's throne. "Did your revenge bring you peace?" Amara looked at the woman who had once been her rival, and for the first time in years, she felt something stir in her empty heart, regret. "No," she whispered, "it wasn't worth it, but I can't undo what I've done." "Perhaps not," Zuri replied, "but you can try to make amends." And so began the long and difficult process of trying to break the curse. Amara spent her remaining years searching for a way to restore love to her kingdom. She consulted wise men and women from distant lands, studied ancient texts, and prayed to the gods for forgiveness. But some things, once broken, can never be fully repaired. While she managed to weaken the curse over time, its effects lingered in Nyota for generations. Parents would tell their children the story of Queen Amara and King Jabari as a warning about the destructive power of revenge and the precious nature of love. They say that even today, in the ruins of the ancient kingdom of Nyota, you can sometimes hear the wind whispering a strange melody. Some claim it's the sound of Amara's eternal regret, while others believe it's the universe itself mourning for a love destroyed by betrayal and revenge. But the story of Queen Amara serves as an eternal reminder that revenge, no matter how justified it might feel, often costs more than the satisfaction it brings. For in trying to destroy love in others, we risk destroying it in ourselves as well. The end of Amara's life was lonely and filled with regret. She died alone in her royal chambers, leaving behind a kingdom that would take generations to heal from her curse. Her last words, recorded by a faithful servant, were simple but profound. Love, even when it hurts, is better than no love at all. After her death, the people of Nyota began the slow process of rebuilding their capacity to love. It took many generations, but gradually the curse began to lose its power. Children learned to laugh again, parents dared to show affection, and couples began to risk their hearts for the chance at true love. And perhaps that's the real legacy of Queen Amara's last meal. Not the curse itself, but the wisdom that came after. That love, despite its potential for pain, is still the most powerful force in the world. And while betrayal can break a heart, it's the choice to stop loving altogether that truly destroys it. And so the story of the Queen's last meal lives on, a dark tale with a simple but powerful message. Be careful what you do with love, for its power can build kingdoms or destroy them, heal hearts or shatter them, create life or end it. But most importantly, it reminds us that no matter how deeply we are hurt, turning our backs on love entirely is perhaps the greatest tragedy of all. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the story. Please subscribe, share, and like for more interesting African tales.